Right now, you are surrounded by more human beings than at any point in history. 8 billion of them. You carry a device in your pocket that can reach almost any one of them in seconds. And yet tonight, in a crowded city, in a full apartment building, with hundreds of contacts in your phone, you might feel completely alone. That feeling has a name: loneliness. You assume it's as old as humanity itself. You assume the first humans felt it around their fires, that it's simply part of being a person. But the real answer is far stranger. Loneliness, the way you experience it, barely existed a few hundred years ago. The word itself was almost never used before 1800. Your great-great-great-grandparents didn't just lack the vocabulary for it. Many of them may never have felt it at all. So where did it come from? And why does it hurt you so much? Go back 400 years. Open an English dictionary from the 1600s and look for the word loneliness. You'll barely find it. What you'll find instead is a different word: woneliness. And here's what should stop you cold. Woneliness didn't mean sadness. It didn't mean emptiness or ache. It simply meant the state of being alone. Neutral. Descriptive. Like saying someone was outdoors or asleep. Being alone was a fact, not a wound. When the word lonely appeared in writing at all, it usually described places, not feelings. A lonely tower. A lonely road. It meant remote, isolated, far from others. It did not mean heartbroken. The historian Faye Bound Alberti spent years tracing this shift through letters, diaries, and medical records. Her conclusion is startling. Loneliness as a chronic emotional state, the gnawing feeling of being disconnected even among people, only becomes visible in the written record around 1800. Before that, people wrote about grief. They wrote about melancholy. They wrote about missing specific people. But the free-floating ache of feeling alone in the world? It's almost nowhere. Then, within a single century, it's everywhere. Novels fill with lonely heroines. Doctors begin describing it as a condition. Poets treat it as the defining wound of the modern soul. Something changed. Not in the human brain, in the human world. So what happened around 1800? 3 revolutions collided at once. First, industrialization. For thousands of years, most humans lived and died within a few miles of where they were born, embedded in villages where everyone knew everyone. Then factories appeared, and millions of people poured into cities full of strangers. For the first time in history, you could stand shoulder to shoulder with 10,000 people and know none of them. Second, individualism. Philosophy and economics began celebrating the self. You were no longer primarily a member of a family, a parish, a guild. You were an individual, responsible for your own destiny. Liberating? Yes, but also isolating. If you are the author of your own life, you are also the only one holding the pen. Third, the slow retreat of religion. For centuries, even a hermit alone in a cave was never truly alone, because God was watching. Remove that presence, and solitude becomes something new. Silence stops being sacred. It starts being empty. But here's where you need to be careful. Because if loneliness the concept is modern, the machinery underneath it is ancient. Unimaginably ancient. To understand it, you have to go back not 400 years, but 2 million. Your ancestors survived for one reason: the group. A lone human on the African savanna was one of the most vulnerable animals alive. Slow, clawless, thin-skinned, no match for a lion, a hyena pack, or even a bad winter. But a band of humans, cooperating, sharing food, watching each other's backs, that was the most dangerous force on the planet. For hundreds of thousands of years, your survival depended entirely on staying inside the circle. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar studied primate brains in social groups and found something remarkable. The size of a primate's neocortex predicts the size of its social group. For humans, that number lands around 150, Dunbar's number, the rough limit of stable relationships your brain evolved to manage. That was your ancestors' entire social universe, around 150 people, and they saw most of them every single day. Now ask yourself, in that world, what was the worst thing that could happen to you? Not injury, not illness. Exile. Being cast out of the group wasn't a punishment, it was a death sentence, executed slowly by hunger, cold, and predators. Which means evolution had a problem to solve. How do you make sure a human never drifts too far from the group? The answer was elegant and brutal. Pain. Evolution wired your brain so that social disconnection physically hurts. The neuroscientist John Cacioppo spent his career proving this. He called loneliness a biological signal, exactly like hunger or thirst. Hunger tells you your body needs food. Thirst tells you it needs water. Loneliness tells you it needs other people. And it doesn't ask politely. Cacioppo's research showed that when you feel lonely, your brain shifts into a threat state. Your levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, rise. Your sleep becomes shallow and fragmented because a lone ancestor sleeping deeply with no one keeping watch was an ancestor about to be eaten. Your brain even becomes hypervigilant to social threats, scanning faces for rejection, expecting hostility, which creates a cruel loop. The lonelier you feel, the more defensive you become, and the more defensive you become, the harder it is for anyone to reach you. The alarm designed to pull you back toward people starts pushing them away. And this alarm doesn't just hurt, it kills. The psychologist Julianne Holt-Lunstad analyzed data from over 300,000 people across 148 studies, and her findings shocked the medical world. Chronic loneliness and social isolation raise your risk of early death as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, more than obesity, more than physical inactivity. Your body, deprived of connection, quietly begins to break down. Inflammation rises, immune function drops, blood pressure climbs. Your cells behave as if you are under siege, because as far as your ancient nervous system is concerned, you are. Alone means exposed. Exposed means dying. The body never got the memo that the savannah is gone. So now the puzzle resolves into something stranger than you expected. Loneliness the alarm is millions of years old. Loneliness the epidemic is barely 2 centuries old. What changed was not the wiring, it was the world the wiring has to operate in. Your ancestors carried the same alarm you do, but it almost never rang because they were almost never alone. From birth to death, they were wrapped in the same 150 faces, shared sleeping shelters, shared meals, shared work, constant touch, constant voices, constant belonging. The alarm sat silent, doing its job by never needing to fire. Then modernity arrived and rebuilt everything. Villages became cities of strangers. Extended families shrank to nuclear ones, then to individuals living alone. In 1800, almost no one lived by themselves. Today, in many Western cities, nearly a third of all households contain exactly one person. Your ancient alarm now lives in an environment it was never designed for, and it is ringing constantly. Which brings the story back to the device in your pocket. You might think the phone is the cure, infinite connection, always available. But notice what your alarm actually responds to. Cacioppo's work showed that loneliness isn't measured by how many people are around you. It's measured by the gap between the connection you have and the connection you need. Your brain evolved to be satisfied by presence, faces watching your face, voices overlapping, hands passing food, 100 small signals per hour saying you are inside the circle. A notification is not presence. A like is not a shared fire. Your nervous system takes the scroll, examines it with 2 million-year-old instruments, and quietly concludes, there is no one here. The alarm keeps ringing. So you scroll more, seeking the very signal the scroll cannot provide. You can be more connected than any human in history and still feel exiled. Because in the terms your body understands, you are. Here's the part almost no one tells you. Understanding this changes what loneliness means. That ache you feel is not proof that something is wrong with you. It's not weakness, and it's not a character flaw. It is a healthy alarm firing in an unhealthy environment. You are a tribal animal, waking up every morning in a world with no tribe, and your body is simply telling you the truth. It also means loneliness responds to the same logic as hunger. You wouldn't try to think your way out of hunger. You'd eat. The research points the same way for connection. Small, regular, face-to-face doses. A repeated coffee with the same person. A weekly gathering that doesn't cancel. The same faces, again and again, until your nervous system starts to recognize a pattern it hasn't seen since the savannah. Familiarity, consistency, circle. And there's one more twist worth carrying with you. If loneliness in its modern form was invented, then it is not inevitable. Feelings that were built by a certain kind of world can be unbuilt by another. Your ancestors didn't feel this ache because their world made it almost impossible to feel. The alarm hasn't changed. The environment has. Which means the environment can change again. Not back to the savannah, but towards something your wiring recognizes. Every time you choose presence over convenience, you are quietly renovating the world your alarm has to live in. So tonight, when you're in that crowd, in that full building, with those hundreds of contacts glowing in your pocket, and the ache arrives, you'll know what it actually is. Not a modern flaw, not a personal failure. An ancient guardian, 2 million years old, still standing watch, still trying to walk you home, to a fire that the modern world forgot to build. You are surrounded by more human beings than at any point in history. Your body is just waiting for you to finally join them.